Chapter 9 of Anne Veronica. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joy Chan. Anne Veronica by H.G. Wells. Chapter the 9th. Discords. Part 1. One afternoon, soon after Anne Veronica's great discovery, a telegram came into the laboratory for her. It ran, "Bored and nothing to do. Will you dine with me tonight somewhere and talk? I shall be grateful. Ramage." Anne Veronica was rather pleased by this. She had not seen Ramage for 10 or 11 days, and she was quite ready for a gossip with him. And now her mind was so full of the thought that she was in love. In love! That marvellous state! That I really believe she had some dim idea of talking to him about it. At any rate, it would be good to hear him saying the sort of things he did. Perhaps now she would grasp them better, with this world-shaking secret brandishing itself about inside her head within a yard of him. She was sorry to find Ramage a little disposed to be melancholy. "I have made over £700 in the last week," he said. "That's exhilarating," said Anne Veronica. "Not a bit of it," he said. "It's only a score in a game." "It's a score you can buy all sorts of things with." "Nothing that one wants." He turned to the waiter, who held a wine card. "Nothing can cheer me," he said, "except champagne." He meditated. "This," he said, and then, "No, is this sweeter? Very well." "Everything goes well with me," he said, folding his arms under him and regarding Anne Veronica with the slightly projecting eyes wide open. "And I'm not happy. I believe I'm in love." He leaned back for his soup. Presently he resumed. "I believe I must be in love." "You can't be that," said Anne Veronica wisely. "How do you know?" "Well, it isn't exactly a depressing state, is it?" "You don't know." "One has theories," said Ann Veronica, radiantly. "Oh, theories! Being in love is a fact. It ought to make one happy. It's an unrest, a longing. What's that?" The waiter had intervened. "Parmesan! Take it away." He glanced at Ann Veronica's face, and it seemed to him that she really was exceptionally radiant. He wondered why she thought love made people happy, and began to talk of the smilax and pinks that adorned the table. He filled her glass with champagne. "You must," he said, "because of my depression." They were eating quails when they returned to the topic of love. "What made you think," he said abruptly, with the gleam of avidity in his face, "that love makes people happy?" "I know it must." "But how?" He was, she thought, a little too insistent. "Women know these things by instinct," she answered. "I wonder," he said, "if women do know things by instinct. I have my doubts about feminine instinct. It's one of our conventional superstitions. A woman is supposed to know when a man is in love with her. Do you think she does?" Ann Veronica picked among her salad with a judicial expression of face. "I think she would," she decided. "Ah!" said Ramage impressively. Ann Veronica looked up at him and found him regarding her with eyes that were almost woebegone, and into which, indeed, he was trying to throw much more expression than they could carry. There was a little pause between them, full for Ann Veronica of rapid elusive suspicions and intimations. "Perhaps one talks nonsense about a woman's instinct," she said. "It's a way of avoiding explanations. And girls and women, perhaps, are different. I don't know. I don't suppose a girl can tell if a man is in love with her or not in love with her." Her mind went off to Capes. Her thoughts took words for themselves. "She can't. I suppose it depends on her own state of mind. If one wants a thing very much, perhaps one is inclined to think one can't have it. I suppose if one were to love someone, one would feel doubtful, and if one were to love someone very much, it's just so that one would be blindest, just when one wanted most to see." She stopped abruptly, afraid that Ramage might be able to infer Capes from the things she had said, and indeed his face was very eager. "Yes?" he said. Ann Veronica blushed. "That's all," she said. "I'm afraid I'm a little confused about these things." Ramage looked at her, and then fell into deep reflection as the waiter came to paragraph their talk again. "Have you ever been to the opera, Ann Veronica?" said Ramage. "Once or twice." "Shall we go now?" "I think I would like to listen to music. What is there?" "Tristan." "I've never heard Tristan and Isolde." "That settles it. We'll go. There's sure to be a place somewhere." "It's rather jolly of you," said Ann Veronica. "It's jolly of you to come," said Ramage. So presently they got into a hansom together, and Ann Veronica sat back feeling very luxurious and pleasant, and looked at the light and stir and misty glitter of the street traffic from under slightly drooping eyelids, while Ramage sat closer to her than he need have done, and glanced ever and again at her face, and made to speak and said nothing. And when they got to Covent Garden, Ramage secured one of the little upper boxes, and they came into it as the overture began. Ann Veronica took off her jacket and sat down in the corner chair, and leaned forward to look into the great hazy warm brown cavity of the house, and Ramage placed his chair to sit beside her and near her, facing the stage. The music took hold of her slowly as her eyes wandered from the indistinct still ranks of the audience to the little busy orchestra with its quivering violins, its methodical movements of brown and silver instruments, its brightly lit scores and shaded lights. She had never been to the opera before except as one of a congested mass of people in the cheaper seats, and with backs and heads and women's hats for the frame of the spectacle. There was by contrast a fine large sense of space and ease in her present position. The curtain rose out of the concluding bars of the overture, and revealed Isolde on the prow of the barbaric ship. The voice of the young seaman came floating down from the masthead, and the story of the immortal lovers had begun. She knew the story only imperfectly, and followed it now with a passionate and deepening interest. The splendid voices sang on from phase to phase of love's unfolding. The ship drove across the sea to the beating rhythm of the rowers. The lovers broke into passionate knowledge of themselves and each other. And then, a jarring intervention, came King Mark amidst the shouts of the sailormen, and stood beside them. The curtain came festooning slowly down, the music ceased, the lights in the auditorium glowed out, and Ann Veronica woke out of her confused dream of involuntary and commanding love in a glory of sound and colors, to discover that Ramage was sitting close beside her with one hand resting lightly on her waist. She made a quick movement, and the hand fell away. "By God, Ann Veronica," he said, sighing deeply, "this stirs one." She sat quite still, looking at him. "I wish you and I had drunk that love potion," he said. She found no ready reply to that, and he went on. "This music is the food of love. It makes me desire life beyond measure. Life! Life and love! It makes me want to be always young, always strong, always devoting my life, and dying splendidly." "It is very beautiful," said Ann Veronica in a low tone. They said no more for a moment, and each was now acutely aware of the other. Ann Veronica was excited and puzzled, with a sense of a strange and disconcerting new light breaking over her relations with Ramage. She had never thought of him at all in that way before. It did not shock her. It amazed her, interested her beyond measure. But also this must not go on. She felt he was going to say something more, something still more personal and intimate. She was curious, and at the same time clearly resolved she must not hear it. She felt she must get him talking upon some impersonal theme at any cost. She snatched about in her mind. "What is the exact force of a motif?" she asked at random. "Before I heard much Wagnerian music, I heard enthusiastic descriptions of it from a mistress I didn't like at school. She gave me an impression of a sort of patched quilt, little bits of patterned stuff coming up again and again." She stopped with an air of interrogation. Ramage looked at her for a long and discriminating interval without speaking. He seemed to be hesitating between two courses of action. "I don't know much about the technique of music," he said at last, with his eyes upon her.